Welcome, everyone, to an all-new episode of For the Love of Sport. We're back. Summer sports are invading parents' lives. I'm sure they spend more hours at fields, ballparks, gyms, studios. Oh, did you want to go on a summer vacation? Because that's not happening. Your vacation to the ballpark there, Mom. Sorry. The summer also brings something very exciting. The Women's World Cup is less than 2 weeks away.
That's right.
If I'm mathing correctly here, we are less than 2 weeks away from the Women's World Cup, which is, I believe it starts July 20th at the lovely hour for those in the mountain time, 1 a.m. But don't worry, East Coast, you get to sleep until 3 a.m. if you'd like to watch that. But hey, wake up, watch the World Cup. It's going to be probably the most competitive Women's World Cup to date, which is super exciting. And yeah, the U.S. team is looking strong, looking ready to rock and roll. What are you most excited for, Simon, for the Women's World Cup?
You know, I know that America is the perennial favorite, which, you know, the dominance, and it speaks to just that the women's team in general, that they continue that level of play and they continue to be the top tier to strive for. But I love seeing the development in other countries and how it's just being elevated every single year, and the significant investment that's being made to bolster those teams. It is fun to see, not just at a national level, all these women's teams being filled with great talent and developing, you know, great teams there, but also from the club level too, getting talent to go to these top tier clubs across, you know, England, Germany, and then also France. And I guess a quick tie into France. One of the top tier teams in France is Olympique Lyonnais across the men's and the women's space. But the Seattle OL Reign have a new general manager, and spoiler alert, it is our guest.
It is our guest.
Just appointed.
This is crazy. I mean, I think it's the first time we interviewed someone, and then in the span of between the interview and when this podcast is getting dropped, they just decided to get a kick-ass new job and be the general manager of an NWSL club that is one of the top ones in the league. So I think that's a sister super cool.
To
the one,
French,
the top
French tier, the top
women's
French tier
team overseas. Yeah,
it's amazing.
It's absolutely nuts. It definitely is. But yeah, I think let's get over to the interview with Lesle. All right, everyone. Thanks for hopping in here. We have got a fantastic guest for you on the podcast today. I'm going to do my best at summarizing here and giving you guys a quick intro. The resume speaks for itself for sure. So Lesle Gallimore spent 26 seasons at the University of Washington, where she won 270 games. You did hear that correctly, and made 15 NCAA tournament appearances, including 2 trips to the Elite Eight. She has also served as the president of the United Soccer Coaches Organization and been a mentor to obviously countless athletes and coaches across the country. Gallimore graduated from California. I know Simon has some questions around what it was like to play for a school and then go on to coach against that school. So we'll get into that a little bit. She had a stellar playing career, earning 4 All-American awards while she was there. She is currently the commissioner for the Girls Academy League and an instructor for U.S. Soccer, which we will dive into much more over the course of the show here. Essentially, at the end of the day, if there's a role in developing youth soccer in our country, having a hand in it, Lesle's there and making a huge impact. So with that, Lesle, welcome to the For the Love of Sport podcast.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. My first question is really just, when did you fall in love with the sport? And then, you know, kind of what keeps that fire stoked with the sport of soccer?
Yeah, I'm one of 4 children, and I have 2 older and 1 younger brother. So I was a girl raised amongst boys by a single mother for the most part. And so, you know, we grew up in Southern California. We had a lot of, fortunately, because we, you know, weren't so well off, we had a lot of very inexpensive activities we could do, primarily go to the beach. So we could surf, swim, boogie board, bodyboard, play volleyball in the sand, run around the neighborhood. But when it came time to play organized sports, I did everything I could to just keep up with my brothers. And soccer was one that my 2 older brothers didn't play. They played baseball primarily, as far as like a organized league situation. And my mom was, however, a den mother for the Cub Scouts. And so I remember in the 3rd grade, I asked her if I could be in the Girl Scouts, and she had an absolute abysmal time as a den mother. And again, this is a woman who worked, 5 days a week, 9 to 5, very, very hard. And as an extracurricular, being a den mother wasn't exactly what she signed up to do and or knew what she was doing. So when I asked her if I could be a Girl Scout, she said no. Find something else to do. And I said, okay. So I saw an AYSO sign up, and I figured all I needed was a pair of cleats.
Nice.
And I could get those from one of my older brothers that had grown out of a pair. And the sign up was fairly inexpensive. So I started playing AYSO in 3rd grade, and I just love the social aspect of it. A lot of kids in my school were playing it, and I was a fairly athletic kid. So I showed an aptitude for it pretty quickly, but it was the organized sport that sort of won me over. I did a lot of like Parks and Rec type things growing up, but soccer really, honestly, outside of high school sports, is the only sport I ever played in an organized fashion. I played volleyball in high school. I surfed, I swam, I played beach volleyball, but none of that really in an outside league. And so, track and field through Parks and Rec, but soccer was, where I kind of found my friends and my gig, and one thing led to another, and that was all it took.
I feel like Simon and I have similar backgrounds where we have older siblings, and a lot of what we did when we were kids was like just trying to keep up with everything else that's going on. I grew up in a neighborhood that was like almost every family had 2 kids, and there was always a younger and an older, and the younger kids just always tried to keep up with whatever the older kids were doing. So that's I feel like that's a lot of kids have that same story.
I just remembered like learning to ride a bike, and we had this little segment of street behind our house where we had a really steep driveway that came down, and you could launch from the driveway into the street. And we'd have kids on either end that would like block traffic, but you would come down the driveway.
You answered my follow-up question. Thank you.
Yeah. You come down the driveway with speed, and then there was like this imaginary circle that you would go, and it was like my brothers called it a bike rodeo, and I just lived to be able to like participate in the bike rodeo. And the bike rodeo consisted of coming down the driveway as quickly as you could, and you had to yell coming down, and then you got into this mix of like bikes, and it was basically like trying to knock each other off your bicycles. So and why I wanted to do that, and mind you, this is the 70s, so late 60s, 70s, nobody's wearing helmets. Are you kidding? And it's all boys, and I'm the only girl. And, I think I participated in the bike rodeo once and survived. And then I'd had enough of that. And I had a younger brother who was kind of my little toy, if you would. He was my playmate. So I got him to do more things. It seemed a lot safer. So sports, and just, it was all about survival till mom got home from work. So that my life was a sport, a survival sport from the get-go.
That's wonderful. I just had so many amazing, just images in my head of everyone coming together to make this bike rodeo happen. And it just turns into like a demo derby, where the kids
100%,
wail at each other.
Crazy time.
This is the beauty of unstructured play in sports. You can be immensely creative, but usually it's going to just result in, how fast can I ride this bike into somebody else? That kind of what it devolves into, right? I had a question. Just, you mentioned beach volleyball, you mentioned swimming, you mentioned surfing. Any other sports that sort of helped out when you were, playing as a kid? Any sports that you look back on and go that actually really helped me out a lot in soccer? We talk a lot about how important it is to play so many different sports when you're growing up.
Yeah, I just thought volleyball. My oldest brother was really good at volleyball. All my brothers played baseball, and it just was too much standing for me. But I thought volleyball was exciting, and I did end up playing high school volleyball, which was a blast. And you could always play on the sand as well. But and I would say, as a college coach, one of the things that I noticed early on with multisport high school athletes, which obviously that's kind of gone away a little bit now, is that some of the kids I recruited that were multi-sport athletes, track athletes, yes, but basketball athletes in soccer, just this idea of reading plays and anticipating change and loss of possession, an ability to kind of defend and mark space, and just tactically the physical movement of it. A lot of kids I recruited that had also played basketball longer in their life than just specifying with soccer ended up being some of the best players I ever coached. So I thought there was, interestingly, a good translation there. And I played pickup basketball, but I never played it in an organized way. But it was I do think those crossover skills and body movements and mechanics and thought processes are a little bit of a lost art when kids specify so young.
Yeah.
So I try to tout those multi-sport athletes as much as I can. And anytime we had one, when I was recruiting at UW, we would try to make it work so they could keep doing both if it was something that they thought they could handle time-wise and compete at a high level in both.
That's refreshing. That's remarkably refreshing. I think it's the opposite everywhere else. So that's how
I was going to say too, I played soccer and basketball all through. I played D3 college and played both while I was there. But it's so interesting you say that. And maybe it's because of geographically where we're located. I found it like very rare for basketball and soccer players for them there to be both. And so whenever I told people, they were like, oh, that's interesting. Because I think in the Midwest, maybe just Minnesota, it's very much you play hockey and soccer, and those two also have very close ties. I think too, in the same way you just mentioned, right? Like marking up, reading, there's plays, all that same sort of stuff. But it was interesting to hear you say the basketball and soccer, because I found it was kind of rare between the two, but they definitely helped me. And you just mentioned, obviously, like when you were coaching, kind of what things you would key into, or when you did find multi-sport athletes, like how important that was to the recruiting process. What were some, I guess, other things from your coaching experience that now in your role with the Girls Academy League, you're really kind of trying to continue to bring through, multi-sport athlete being one? Was there anything else that really stands out to you that might be shifting away from, that you were like, this was something that really worked, or when I was at, University of Washington, this was something we really focused on?
Yeah, I just think there's been this whole movement towards, treating athletes or student athletes, because student athletes is the big word, right?
Yeah.
And the big catchphrase, and when you're recruiting in college, is like, we care about the student and the athlete. Well, there's been a shift from that as well, because you don't want to just care about the student and just the athlete, or paint anyone into any kind of corner. Is this whole idea of holistic development and meeting every person where they are and treating them as an individual, and trying to figure out through sport how you can help them just maximize their potential as a human being through the lessons that sport provides. And I think in the Girls Academy, that for me has been the biggest carryover, is this idea of caring about the individual within a team sport concept, and how we provide different avenues for them to be empowered as leaders, for them to have a voice in what they're doing in their athletic career, but also to expose them to things that, down the line, once your playing career is over, or even if your aspirations of being a soccer player are very different than someone else's. Like, I want to be on the national team. I don't care about being on the national team. I just want to go to college where they have the major I want, or I would really like to use soccer as a vehicle to be able to travel, or to internationally be able to use the other language that I know. I'd like to immerse myself in another country. And soccer is a great vehicle for that because it's truly the world sport. You can go anywhere in the world and throw a soccer ball out, and your language barrier doesn't matter. You're automatically like, oh, okay, soccer, football, soccer person. But I think that to me has been the carryover from a 34-year college coaching career to being the commissioner of this league now. And even watching our women's professional league develop over the last years in the U.S., stopping 2 leagues, and now the 3rd league being the longest one that we've had, is that players now, many of whom are professionals that I've known since they were younger, are, I wouldn't say demanding it, but the female professional athlete expects to be treated like a person, not just as an athlete, and all the things that go with that. And so teaching them to know what that looks like, what that environment looks like when you're in a positive one versus a negative one, is important to teach them when they're younger, because a lot of times the light bulb doesn't go off until they're in a bad situation in their 20s and 30s. And whether that's in sport or in a job, they don't know how to recognize when something doesn't suit who they are, or they're not valued the way they should be valued, and they're not empowered to have a control over their own dynamic within a workplace or a team or whatever the environment is. So I think those are all the lessons you learn through sport. And it's to me, it's why I stayed in it, because I felt like I was empowered at a very young age as a leader. I was empowered to have a say in my pathway, in that my college career was started at a place where we did not have varsity status, and we had no money. We were a club sport that got varsity status by the time I got there as a freshman, but we still had to operate as a club sport. We had to politic with the athletic department to become a full varsity sport. We had to fundraise. We had to, same as when I was a coach, we had to fundraise. We had to find out ways to make it work, which to me, looking back and, in that early era of the game, there was something that was just beautiful about it because you had complete extra intrinsic motivation for it to work out because you loved playing. And so a lot of the players and women of my generation, we did all of that 100% for the love of the sport. Not to use the name of the podcast, but
no, keep using it. Say it again.
but we did. It was absolutely 100% for the love of the sport. And because to make it happen, we had to do the work. And then when you do the work and you're the one laying the ground, you're that much more vested in it. And I stayed vested in it. Yep. I stayed vested in helping other women coach. I stayed vested in my own education and making sure that I put myself around other people that made me better. And how could I keep learning? How could I continue to be a good coach for the players that I had? How could I, use my failures to fuel my potential next success? And I think all these things were, a great evolution that I've been able to live through. I've lived Title IX basically. And so, for me to, in this day and age to sit where I sit, and every day you're going to hear negatives, right, in the world. You're going to hear negatives about kids, about parents, about leagues, about coaches, about all these things that are wrong, what we should do. This is broken, that's broken. And I really do every day try to remember where we started and where we are, and focus on the future and where we could go, and to try to be solution-oriented, problem-solving, and as opposed to dwelling on what we don't have, what we can't do, and what's wrong. And that's a difficult thing to do in this space sometimes. It gets very noisy in a bad way. And so you just have to block it out and remember what your mission and vision and goal is. And for me right now, the mission and goal of our league is to just empower these girls to have a playing experience that's positive, that helps them as people down, and hopefully keeps them in the game for their whole life.
I mean, I do like the point where you kind of called out, and I listen to a lot of other podcasts. I try to listen to a lot of like women's sports podcasts just to hear different perspectives. And I do think like it very much is the case of, professional women athletes now they've gone through kind of the unfortunate situations, and they're calling it out to say like, here are the things that you deserve. These are not just things that are like happen to everyone. Like, you have to be aware of the stuff that's going on and voice. And you do see a shift in that, especially of the younger generation too, like, folks that are more closer to our age, reaping the benefits of all the work that you guys have done to get us to where it is. And it's inspiring that you have dedicated so much and continue to continue that for kids and through the league as well. Like it's, your full life's work is kind of just laid out, and you can definitely see from where we were to where we are now. It's, I don't know. It's super inspiring.
You've left a legacy.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That's
it's ultimately what I think everybody strives to do at some point, but you can like literally point to it. Like that's pretty darn cool.
That's very kind of you to say. I do feel as though, I've been really fortunate to be surrounded by great role models my entire life and career, starting with my mother and pushed and inspired in a specific way by my brothers. But and then just from teammates and coaches and people that I've been able to be around my whole life. I feel very blessed to have been in this game, in particular in this country, at a time where there were so many new opportunities just kept opening and growing. And hopefully whatever I've done to keep myself in those conversations and in those rooms and in those groups and in the jobs that I've had and in the opportunities that I've had, it's been because I felt valued and I felt prepared because of some of the other experiences that I've had. And so it's, I feel really fortunate.
I want to ask, kind of going to your coaching days, and Marie alluded to it a little bit, but what's it like? And forgive me if I'm way off base here with the Pac-12 back when you had initially started coaching or playing, I guess. Did you play against UW when you were at Cal? As a club team?
No, they didn't have a team yet. So I was only the second coach ever at Washington. They started the program in 91. and I got the job in 94. They had one
Nice.
coach that was here in Seattle for 3 years, and then he left and took the job at Texas. And so I was the second coach ever hired, and now they're on their third coach ever hired in 30 something years. So,
Wow.
yeah. So, and she's been there, I've been at 3 years now, going into her fourth season, I think. So it's, so I felt, lucky to be in that position. Back in the day when I first started playing Cal, it was, I want to say there were 17 Division I teams in the country, and Cal was one of them. And we didn't really play, nobody was in conferences. Everyone just played each other. And so by the time I left UW, I want to say, and it's around that number now, probably 323 to 333 Division I women's programs. So it grew significantly in my time as a coach. And I was an assistant coach at Cal for 4 years after I finished playing. And I went to San Diego State. That was my first head coaching job. I was there for 4 seasons. And I'll never forget the first time we played Cal. I was on the bench, and I accidentally, 8-year habit was hard to break. I accidentally said, "Come on, Bears, go Bears," instead of "Let's go Aztecs." And it took me a little bit to earn my team's trust back after that game. They were not happy with me. I think they understood.
Force a habit. No, it's all good.
It was a big boo. Yeah. And then, by the time I got to Washington in 94, the league had grown significantly. USC and UCLA had started adding programs, and we got to a full complement of Pac-12 teams while I was at Washington. And we were one of very few sports that had all 12 teams competing. So it was awesome to be a part of that growth. And, I was at UW 26 years, and I would say every time we played Cal, there was something a little bit special about it for me. But it was, at one point in time, the switch flipped, where your paycheck's coming from and your allegiances lie. There was there was no pity, no mercy, no sadness, no real emotion around it, other than, again, I was really proud to be a part of both programs, honestly, and have had a small piece in the success or the growth of either. I've now lived half my life in Washington. I lived half my life in California, and had never lived outside of California until I moved here. So it's, I have the great experience of both. And I just didn't really ever look much further. I found happiness here and in this position and in this job. And I was able to work with my best friend for 24 of my 26 years. She was my associate head coach, and we both grew up in the game together through the national teams, through amateur soccer. We played in our 30s, 40s, and 50s, and both found different ways of staying involved in the game. She's now the head coach of the deaf women's national team. She runs an academy within our league, and we were both able to raise families because we did it together. So as women in the sport, we found a great way to make it happen where we could have, and I wouldn't say work-life balance, because I think that's an anomaly, but we were able to do all the things that we wanted to do and enjoy them. I mean, there was never a day where we dreaded going to work because we were going to miss out on something with our family, because we spent time with our families. And so, we feel really lucky to have had that time that we had, and to have had the success that we had.
Yeah, I have, no, I have 2 follow-ups. I think the first one I was going to say is, it's such an undervalued thing. I think people talk about a lot, like, love what you do and it'll be all happy-go-lucky. But I also think the
never work a day in your life
of it is like, if you enjoy the people you're working with, that's really where like the magic happens. And when you can do it with like your closest friends, or they become like part of your family, that's really when you can start to like unlock all the stuff you had just said. It's like your work-life balance doesn't exist, but essentially your life mend together and mold together through the years, and you get to enjoy all of it as just your life versus
your general happiness. Yeah, your general happiness. Yeah. Looking back now and from experience, what I tell young coaches all the time is, it is always going to be 100% about the people, 100%, not even any other percentage.
Yeah.
And if your processes and your environment and your culture, if you get those things right and they're intentional, the people that are around you are what are going to support you, and vice versa. So that's life, right?
Yeah. It's a great way to put it. Like if you build a positive culture, if you build a positive environment, and you walk the talk, and you put your actions behind every single one of your words, then people are naturally going to want to be a part of it. And those people are the ones that you want to be a part of it.
Yeah. And it
Yeah.
sounds so easy, but it's not. It's work. I mean,
no, it's just that's what it is.
yeah,
Listener,
it's work.
it's that
I think,
easy. Just do
and
that.
I would honestly say, and I would say too, like to people that want to coach, as a profession, either in college or coach, or is this idea of, valuing every member of a team and every part of a team and trying to get the environment and the culture right is, there's so many buzzwords and things that people talk about, and people that do this for a profession that, as consultants to try to help people culture build in business, not just in sports. But I think one of the things as leaders, and I'm certainly guilty of it, and it's one of my things as experience that I would, share with others going into the profession, is the minute you get comfortable, your antenna should go up. Because if you get comfortable, or you get complacent about what your environment is like, or if you get too tired to even deal with one thing that in your gut and your intuition tells you isn't right, and you let it go, and you tolerate something, it could ruin it all in a minute, and or at least have a negative effect on it that might be hard to go back from. And I've experienced that. To in all transparency, I think any college coach that tells you, or any kind of coach of a big program, a professional team, or a club, if they don't have that to share, then they're lying, in my opinion. If they've done it for a long time, they're absolutely telling a fib. They're telling a fib.
What's the line from Princess Bride? Life is pain. And if anybody tells you different, they're lying or trying to sell you something.
Yeah, probably. What a great movie. That wouldn't be a line I would remember from that movie, but I'm going to go watch it again.
Simon,
I got different lenses on.
This guy pulls out from movies. Truly, you never know. You really never know. Oh, that's great. I think you kind of touched on it a little bit, but obviously you went from, coaching a Division I program for a number of years and then transitioned into, being the commissioner of the Girls Academy League. Can you maybe tell us a little bit more about like what your role is at the, at the league, and a little bit more about that? And we've got, what we tried to do when we set out is we've got a ton of other, organizations, big, small, soccer, other sports. Is there any like advice from your perspective and lens of, you've been a coach, you've, instruct coaches, work with athletes, you've kind of run the gambit across all the different levels. Is there anything you would kind of take away and provide out to our listeners?
Yeah, I think it's been I've told people, even as much as recently, because of coming up on the end of our third season, this league was a startup. And it was a startup sort of out of necessity when U.S. Soccer dropped the development academy, and a bunch of clubs around the country had no league to play in. And not every league was accepting of every club, and they more wanted their teams to join other clubs that were already in their leagues. And it was just, people trying to keep their livelihood, basically. And I was witnessing it firsthand, because Amy's the academy director for a club here in town that's attached to the professional team, the Reign Academy. So I was watching this whole thing unfold. And so there were a few things coming in, I guess, from a leadership standpoint, that we knew we were going to have to hire people, and how quickly we could do that financially was yet to be seen. We went from me to one employee to two more. So there's 3 of us in the first year. Some part-time people jumped in, and then now we're at me plus 4, 3 years in, and we're hopefully, we're looking to grow again next year. So this idea of people management, and especially during a pandemic when it was on Zoom and you hadn't met any of these people in person, the number of hours that we were putting in for the first 2 years coming into this season was not a mentally or physically healthy, sustainable program for any of us. But the 5 of us have stuck together, and I think done a good job, along with our board of directors and the collaboration of the other directors in our league, of working hard towards the same goal. And when we tend to get unaligned, it's because a faction of people have taken their eye off what the mission and the vision of this particular league is. And so I think I've been the one to try to make sure that that I personally don't lose sight of that, and start to, again, listen to the noise or go down a different path, because my charge is to do what I was hired to do, which is to help provide a national platform for girls specifically who are trying to grow as people and as soccer players simultaneously. And what we can provide to that is what always should come first. And that the whole is always going to be greater than any one individual. And to be able to apply that across, different areas of the country with different sets of parents and different sets of views on how youth soccer and the youth soccer experience should go is a big challenge. So I think I started out by saying that for the last 3 years, I've probably experienced my biggest growth spurt, if you will, as an adult, as any other time in my life, because it's been such a new challenge. I think as a college soccer coach and doing a lot of the other things I was allowed to do when I was coaching college soccer, whether it was coach education or traveling abroad as a sports envoy or announcing, or, I had a variety of other things that I was able to do, coaching with national teams. And this job in particular, being commissioner of this league, has had such a huge effect on me in a short period of time. One, because the expectations and the pressure to make it work, and the ability to try to manage that during a really, for everyone in the world, a really difficult period in our time with the starting with the pandemic. This league started during the pandemic. March of 2020 is when the pandemic officially started, and April 15th of 2020 is when U.S. soccer dropped. And so the plus, the shiny bright spot in all of that was that no one was playing soccer, really. We were all in isolation. But I do think that period of time and trying to make this whole thing work was a strain on a lot of people. And we're seeing it with youth now too. It was a strain on kids. It's really affected how we operate as a country, as a society. And so for me, these last 3 years, I do not remember as steep a learning curve in any point in my life, in my life in general. And the job kind of was the catalyst of that. But I'm thankful for it. As difficult as it's been, and as big of a challenge, and as much, that I've probably failed 80% of the time and maybe succeeded 20. It's been, the 80% was necessary to be able to have those 20% success. In a job like this, I think that rate will start to even out a little bit based on what I've learned in this amount of time.
Yeah. I think it's so cool though, to obviously we would never want to go back to the past years that, as you said, way better than I could say, as a society and country we've gone through, and really everyone's gone through. But it is kind of, cool to know that you did so many things in your life. You were so successful. And now here, just, within the last 3 years has been kind of some of the biggest growth you've had. I think that's really cool that you can do so much in your life and be down one path and then shift over. And all of a sudden it's a new adventure. It's a new challenge. It's a new opportunity to learn and make an impact on, obviously still soccer as a sport, but in such a different way than what you maybe were doing in the past. I think that's, it's kind of inspiring for, I think, me as somebody who's and I won't speak on behalf of Simon, but you may also agree with me.
Go on.
But I think it's a lot of times it's what are you going to do? What's your career? Make all these decisions. It's well, right now I'm doing this, and maybe in however many years, it's nice to know that there's always going to be other things that you can do, and your greatest impacts could come later in your life, or they could come throughout your life in different spurts. So anyways, that was off my soapbox now.
No, it's good. It's a nice reminder. It's that difference between a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. Shifting quickly into some big things that are coming up here that I wanted to get your take on, especially the Women's World Cup. And I think it's Australia, New Zealand this year, right? Correct. Okay. Just a couple questions. Your take on the Women's World Cup, especially the Americans and how they've really helped grow the women's game. I'd love to get just your opinion on that. And then after all that, I'd love to know your predictions for this upcoming World Cup. And let's add another cherry on top of that. If there is a country that's pretty much going to be the next U.S. or is going to be at the same level, who do you think that's going to be?
Yeah. Well, the World Cup's exciting. I've been to most of them on the women's side, and the men when they were here in the U.S., and I've obviously followed them all for a really long time. I have game tickets for a lot of the games this summer. I don't have a plane ticket yet.
Do you have people that you're going with, or do you have extras?
Well, that's been the problem. It's later. There's a couple problems. It's later in the summer, so it's July through August as opposed to June through July. I don't know how much you know about Seattle winters and spring, but it's been kind of dismal here. And now the summer is the absolute best time of year here. It will be winter, the end of winter in New Zealand and Australia in July and August. So it'll be 40 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit. So I don't know if I'm willing to trade my Seattle summer for that. But with that said, The World Cup is such a tremendous event on the men's and the women's side. And our women have as opposed to our men, is our women were able to start out in the late 80s in 91 in the first World Cup as being one of the lead countries in the sport. Our men have started, years behind where the rest of the world was in the game. It was newer to the men here than it was to our women. So we were able to get a little bit of a head start on a lot of other countries on the women's side and get out there on top. But I would never, ever bet against them. I mean, they will, every time they enter a World Cup, have a chance of winning it. Just, they will. How the parity and the challenge has evolved, many thanks to countries like the US, Germany, Norway, China early on. I mean, those are the ones you heard about all the time. I think that one of the biggest up and coming countries is England. They have obviously, with their league and with, the crowds and the standard of play has been phenomenal. Canada has certainly made strides. And I think domestically and trying to get a league there, a lot of the Canadians play all over the world and many in the NWSL, but trying to get their own domestic league up and running and sustainable is going to be important to them. But Canada has made strides. And Spain, obviously, is another country you have to talk about. The Netherlands from the last World Cup. They've changed coaches. She's now with England. So, that's going to be an interesting tournament to see how both of those countries do. But there's so many up and coming countries in this tournament. But either way, it's going to be exciting. And I think the U.S. is primed for another one.
Yes.
We finish up every one of our interviews the same way. We finish up with a this or that gauntlet. We got 9 rapid fire questions. We got 9 rapid fire answers. We're going to get your game face on, get your competitive level high.
All right.
We are going to rattle these off real quick right here. You ready to go?
I think so.
Here we go. Add a movie, candy or popcorn?
Popcorn.
Is it pronounced GIF or GIF?
GIF.
Cups in the cupboard, right side up or upside down?
Upside down.
Oscars or Grammys? Or neither.
That's our answer.
I'm gonna go Oscars, I guess.
We're trying to keep the award shows alive and well, one podcast episode at a time.
Yeah. I'll go Oscars.
I love that. I love the answer. Next question. All right. Number 5. Soccer, snow game or rain game?
Rain.
Yeah, in Seattle, that's on brand. Yeah. Okay, would you rather score on a penalty kick or a direct kick?
Oh, direct kick.
All right, coaching soccer is off the table. Would you rather coach volleyball or swimming?
Volleyball, leaps and bounds.
Beach volleyball or indoor volleyball? Surprise, either. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, this isn't a this or that. This is just a question we added in. Any professional athlete outside of soccer that you can think of that would be the greatest of all time?
Oof.
I think. Is that the question?
If they chose to play soccer instead.
Oh, like LeBron James. Like if he decided soccer was for him, he probably would have been a really good soccer player.
I'm actually going to use her because she actually is a part owner of a soccer team. She, I don't know how well she'd do, but I wouldn't want to play against her. Serena Williams.
There you go.
Oh, yeah. That's a really good one.
Great
she would have, she'd crush anything.
Final question. Who is your NWSL team?
Oh, the OL Reign. My hometown team, been a season ticket holder since they got here. Yeah, I'm a fan.
Outstanding.
Would you go to a...
I'm in the Sounders.
I was going to say Reign or Sounders.
Ooh, both. I've been a season ticket holder for both. Obviously, Sounders have been around longer.
Wow.
So, both. I'm a huge fan.
I did see, I have to ask, on your LinkedIn, your picture is like you in a microphone at a Sounders game. Did you get to do like some fun thing there? I think I saw that.
Oh,
I believe so.
Was it microphone? Was it?
I think so.
I got a golden scarf there. So there was a thing. Yeah, there was a thing at my last year at UW. Amy and I both were given the golden scarf, which is a big honor. It was one of the highlights of my life, just because I've been a fan for so long, and it's really cool the other people that have gotten it. So when we both got it, it was a pretty fun day for us and our family.
Yeah, the picture's awesome. You guys look juiced up, so I had to ask.
Yeah, it was fun. We got the golden scarves, and then right before the game starts, you get to scream to the entire stadium, "Scarves up, Seattle."
Okay, there you go. That must be the picture then. We'll try to include that in
It's
somewhere.
It's on my wall right above me. So how I didn't know which one you were talking about. Yeah.
I know. I was like, oh crap, is this not correct?
No, that's right.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Very cool. Yeah, we'll share the photo. It's very cool. Along with all the other tidbits of information and links and everything else. But Leslie, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Leslie,
you guys so
thank
much
you so much.
It's a pleasure.
She's amazing. We obviously had to get her predictions on the World Cup. And as all of us are likely never going to bet against the U.S. team. So we're going to give our World Cup predictions mostly under the context that this is the team we think is going to go against the U.S. in the final. And I guess we probably should have looked at the draw because this could not be possible for some of these predictions. But we're just going to say the team we're most excited to watch and that we think is going to go really far. Simon, who do you got? Who are your eyes on?
I have two teams, but I mean, I'm going to go with.
Tell him for one. You give him an inch. He takes a mile.
I'm going to whittle it down to one. I'm whittling it down to one. I'm going to go with Spain. I had to narrow it down to one, and I think Spain has probably the most talented squad that's in the field. That's not the United States. I think Spain definitely could be up there and challenge them, but at the same time, I mean, there's challenges across all of it. The level of play has risen so much that Spain is up there, but it also is just a very close second to all the other teams. So what do you think, Bree?
Yeah, I think. Well, I think Spain is a good pick. I feel like they're kind of like a dark horse. They're not, as of the last handful of years, been super like up there, but I feel like last time they played, they surprised a lot of teams. So I'm looking forward to watching them. But I'm going to go with one of the home clubs, Australia.
Nice.
I think they're always top kind of echelon. Oof, good word there. But they've got Sam Kerr, and she's nuts. She's having an incredible club season. She scores 1 million goals. It's going to be super hard for defenses to stop her. And I think if you can score goals at a World Cup, that gives you a ton of momentum, makes you really hard to obviously beat because you have to continue to keep up and score a lot of goals as well. And not a lot of teams can do that as much. So I'm going Australia as my pick outside of the U.S.
Who's your surprise team? Let's throw this out there. Who do you think is going to make like a run that's going to like inspire, a lot of young girls in their country to be like, I'm playing soccer?
I am going to go with, and I have to just make sure that they made it this year, which they did not. So Scotland was last World Cup. They made a huge run and surprised a lot of people, but I don't think that they made it this year. So obviously I can't pick them. I think I'm going to go with, Canada did really well at the Olympics, the last Olympics, just our sisters to the north, if you will. So I feel a little bit of pride. I live in northern Montana now, so I'm very close to the Canadian border. I'm just getting the vibes. But I think Canada, they're a tough team to beat. They're always competitive. They have a lot of really good players if they can stay healthy. Yeah, I think Canada is going to be I don't know necessarily if they're like a surprise pick, but they would be kind of like my pick for that.
They're the one to watch. You're one to watch. Okay.
Yes,
I like that.
Yes.
I like Canada, our neighbors to the north. I'm going to go Norway. Mainly because their star player is on the Barcelona squad. Barcelona. Sorry, I got to make sure I get that in there too. Barcelona. But I feel like they are geared up for a run. I think they're in a friendly group, and I'd love to see them. I'll just see them succeed. It's just it's one of those gut feelings. You know what I mean? Like hopefully it's proven right, but I feel like they've got a lot of talent on that team, and I think they could make a good run.
Awesome. Well, there's only one way to find out, folks, and that is to tune in to the Women's World Cup. There are obviously games at interesting hours of the day due to the games being played in New Zealand and Australia, but a lot of the games will be replayed across, various different streaming platforms and on TV. So make sure that you tune in. If you're, listening to this and you're a parent or a coach or an admin of a youth soccer player team organization, introduce the World Cup into your programming. Make sure you're sharing that. It's a great way to, get people excited about the game of soccer again. And when we talk about the next World Cup, it's going to be in our own backyard. So that's very exciting to look forward to on the men's side. But with that,
We're going to tie a nice bow on this one. This has been another episode of For the Love of Sport. As always, feel free to send an email out to us at ftlospod@nbcuni.com. If you have questions for, say, someone who's involved in Special Olympics and what that youth sport experience is like, please feel free to send them our way. And I will also throw out a couple other things. One, if you have a this or that that's causing quite a bit of debate, for instance, what kind of chocolate milk person are you? Is it powder or is it syrup? Feel free to throw that to ourselves as well. And if you have any stories from the pitch, from the field, scenarios that you would want our input on how things were handled, if you would handle things differently, send them to us. We love to talk about it. We love to talk about youth sports, and especially that experience, whether you're a coach, an admin, or a parent. So don't shy away from posing a question. If we don't know, odds are our guest will have a great opinion on the matter.
Absolutely. We look forward to hearing from you, dear listener. But this show would not be possible without the fantastic team behind the scenes that helps us get these episodes out. We've got Kelsey Irwin, who is our marketing manager, helping us to work with guests and promote the podcast. Joe Brazonik is our amazing producer. And we've got Troy Stone, the legendary sound engineer, who brings you these average voices in a above average way. So thank you to the team behind the scenes, and thank you, Simon, for doing this with me. We'll be back in a couple weeks with an episode all about Special Olympics and what that means for the youth sports experience. We can't wait for you guys to hear that one. And until then, have a great day, week, whatever you're doing.
Enjoy summer. Get out there. Go play.
Bye.